Welcome to the next video in my series about the Dark Eye core rules, and I'm going to talk a bit more about combat, about melee combat. And there is something I completely forgot to explain you when I gave you the overview, but it is a more specific rule anyway. It is the range rules for weapons. When you make an attack roll, you have to be in the ideal range for your weapon, or you will get a negative modifier on your attack. It means every weapon has a range, like short, mid, or long range assigned, and a short range would be like a dagger or a knife, and mid range is for a mace or a sword, and long range is for something like a polearm. And when you're not in that range, you simply get a negative modifier on your roll. I personally don't use this rule, but it is in the core rules and it is supposed to be used. Then there is critical success and critical failure in attack rolls. It's possible. And when you roll 1, you get a critical success always. You still do the second roll to see how critical it is. If you fail the second roll, you still get a better result, and the defense of your opponent is halved. If you succeed in your second roll, then you get your opponent's defense halved, and your damage value, if you hit, will be doubled. And if you're rolling a 20, you will have a failure and possibly a critical failure. A 20 is always a miss in attack, no matter how high your attack value is. If it is above 20 and you roll 20, you still miss. You roll again to see if it's critical. If you miss again, then it's a critical miss, and the basic rules say you get 1d6 plus 2 damage that is not reduced by armor value. There is an optional rule, and I'm going to cover it this time. Usually I ignore the optional rules. There's an optional rule with a table you can roll on for a more detailed critical result, and you roll 2d6, add the numbers together, and then you look what result you get. And there is something in like you get damage, or you fall to the ground, or you break your weapon, you lose your weapon, and it's described how it works and how you can get your weapon back, how you can get back on your feet, and so on. But this is an optional rule. Optional rules you can always see in these gray boxes. They always look the same. There are several optional rules. Usually I usually don't explain them, but in this case I simply explained it and mentioned it because I think it's way cooler personally. So the next thing is defense rolls. A defense roll can be two different things. It can be a parry roll, which is defending with your weapon. You simply block the opponent with your weapon, or you make a dodge roll, and dodging is just getting out of the way of the attack. What you use is usually up to you. You would of course take the higher value. Your dodge value is based on your attributes. Your defense value is based on your parry value is based on your skill in the weapon. And there is one situation where you cannot use the defense roll, the parry roll. That is when you're fighting a huge opponent like a dragon or an elephant or a giant, because when they try to hit you, they're so massive you just cannot block the attack with your tiny sword or whatever you use. Then you have to get out of the way, or you simply will be wiped away by the attack. But else you can simply choose what you want to do, and you can have several attacks, several defense rolls in one turn when you get attacked more than once. But every time you get an additional modifier of -3 for every new defense roll you make. So the first defense roll is normal, the second defense roll is -3, and the third is -6, and so on. And you can roll defense rolls as long as your defense value stays positive with the modifier applied. When the modifier goes below 1, you simply get hit if the attack of your opponent succeeds. Then there is a rule for using shields or parry weapons. I'm not going to explain them in detail, but the idea is the shield and the parry weapon have a bonus assigned to, and the bonus is added to your defense value or your parry value. And it's a bit more complicated, but I'm not going to explain this. But that's the idea. You use a shield, a parry weapon, you get a higher defense. Then there's critical success and failure. If you roll a 1, you get a critical success in your parry, and you have to roll again. If you fail the second roll, you get nothing except for you have parried and or defended. And if you roll a success in your second roll, you get a free attack on your opponent. That's a special attack. It is -4. And it cannot be modified in any way. The attack roll cannot get critical, no miss, no critical hit. You simply roll attack -4, and then if you succeed, you roll damage. Your opponent cannot defend. Everything else stays the same. The damage you do is reduced by armor value. So the additional roll you get is attack -4, and then you assign damage if you hit. That's all. The critical failure in defense is when you roll a 20, you have to do the second roll. If you succeed in the second roll, then you simply have not defended and get hit. If you miss in the second roll, then you get the 1d6 plus 2 damage like you do in an attack. And again, we have a special chart for critical results. You can use it instead of the 1d6 plus 2 damage, and you roll 2d6 and look what you get, and there's a description what it means and how it plays out the result. Again, this is optional. You would use it instead of the 1d6 plus 2, and I'm only explaining it this time because I think it's way more fun. The last step in combat is assigning damage. Damage is, there's not really much to say about damage. I mean, the weapon has a damage value that can be like 1d6 plus 1 is the lowest, I think, for any weapon. There maybe if you're not using a real weapon, if you're improvising something, then it may be less. But the weakest weapon, I think, a dagger or a knife, is 1d6 plus 1. And it can go up to 2d6 plus 2 or 6 or something like that. And things in between. In the 4th edition, there were more weapons explained. Or given, there was a longer list of weapons, and there were weapons that could do 3d6 plus something damage. That will probably be described in an additional source book about weapons. There's usually a source book about weapons and armor, and I think, and I expect, it's my guess, that we'll get such a source book for the 4th edition too, for the 5th edition too. So that is everything. There are some rules for close combat described here, but I think that will be another video. I'm going to make a cut here, and I'm making another video where I explain the rules about melee combat I haven't yet explained. So if you have any questions about this, then feel free to ask, and else that's it for now. So bye.